The Downtown Rams podcast is brought to you by our proud sponsors, Rams On Demand, Seat Giant, Throwback Joe, and now our new sponsor, Kayvon Webster's new LA food truck, Vibe 305, from South Beach to Sunset. Hashtag catch a vibe. For more information, check out vibe305.com today. Now enjoy the show.
35-30. Robert Woods, first down 20. 10-5. Touchdown. LA.
It's a blinding light underneath the dirt down.
No, it's Goff who keeps it. And Goff goes crashing into the end zone.
6th Street Bridge.
Aaron Donald almost beat the football there and comes away with his third sack of the afternoon. Not immediately in sack. Corey Littleton, have yourself a day.
When will you save me?
Todd Gurley, 20, 10. Gurley for MVP. Touchdown LA. And he gets gobbled up. Savage has to eat it as Michael Brockers picks up the sack.
It's Pitts. Nicole Roby Coleman.
He's decked by Stu Khan.
Touchdown. Brandon Cooks. Incredible.
For the first time since 2003, the Rams are NFC West champions.
Welcome back, guys, to another Downtown Rams podcast. This is a little different. I'm doing something completely new. I've received a bunch of direct messages, and I received texts from some friends, and I got the idea that I should start doing an Around the NFL episode each week, maybe even two. So I'm going to definitely dive into this. This is for Week 5. This is going to be my takeaways and everything. Week 5, I'm going to go down the line for all the games, and we'll go from there. This is episode 128, and 129 of the podcast will soon follow. It'll be the Rams and Broncos preview. So this is still a Rams-centric podcast. It's just going to have some NFL episodes. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. And I just want to say, if you like what you hear already, be sure to leave a review on iTunes and be sure to subscribe. That way, you have your phone, you want to listen to the podcast, boom, it's already downloaded to your phone. So do yourself a favor and do that if you like the podcast. And without further ado, we'll dive right into it. The Thursday night football game. It was the New England Patriots at home against the Indianapolis Colts. Andrew Luck, in my opinion, really put up a show. I think he is that quarterback that has like the fewest around him, the fewest amount of help, and really what he was able to do is save a blowout. It ends up being a 38-24 game that should have been a lot worse. Luck really didn't have much time to throw the football. The Colts are really dealing with some injuries on the offensive line, but even so, this is still a very talentless Colts team. There are there's a lot of intriguing players. You talk about a Malik Hooker, you talk about their second round pick in front of the podcast, Kamoka Toure. You talk about even Darius Leonard, the linebacker, guys like that. Obviously, T.Y. Hilton's really good, and they get Nyheim Hines and Jordan Wilkins in the draft. But, the fact of the matter is this. The Colts are not special in any way. They have Andrew Luck and Jacoby Brissett, which puts them above the league average, in my opinion, at the position. I think that they're set at the quarterback position. However, Luck really doesn't have a lot going for him around him. Now, Nyheim Hines came through. He was pretty productive, and they were able to get some points on the board. Obviously, they scored 24, but this was the Patriots' arguable coming out party. This was them saying, we do this every single year. We start out, rough in September. We come back, and everyone is, the thing is, when the Patriots start off rough, everyone starts questioning Bill Belichick. They start saying, Tom Brady, is it done? Should he hang up the cleats? And really the fact of the matter is, if you look back, Bill Belichick does not have a consistent winner in September. The Patriots are normally not a team that starts off great, but they don't need to, because what does that tell me? That tells me that Belichick, who's one of the greatest coaches to ever coach this football game, this sport, in my opinion anyway, or rather, I guess it's kind of a fact, he shows no matter how poorly they start, he always figures it out. And the way they do things in New England, they have a completely new set of roster going on. You talk about, the idea of them adding and subtracting. They trade away Brandon Cooks. No worries, they traded for Josh Gordon. It's little things like that. They're constantly shuffling guys in and out, and they're able to continue winning with a crazy model that wouldn't work on any of the other teams in the league. Maybe a few, but not many. So the Patriots, this was a huge win for them. One of the big things here that I look at is the fact that they were able to really get Sony Michel going. Sony Michel is a first-round pick in his own right by the Patriots. And if you watched him at Georgia, he's very talented. It should not come as a surprise. But Michel was able to continue his brilliance. Last week, he looked really good on the ground. This week, he gets in the end zone. It didn't look like the Colts could really stop him. But that was really key for the Patriots, as well as the fact that Tom Brady had a lot of time to be able to deliver strikes down the field. In an offense that really creates a lot of separation downfield, gets a lot of open men all over, for Brady, the quick slant. You talk about the seam buster with Gronkowski, now adding Josh Gordon, who he was able to come down with a touchdown. It's a pretty big deal. The Patriots did just put Juwan Bentley, the impressive rookie linebacker who was having a really good season. They just put him on IR. They lose players like that. They lost Rex Burkhead earlier in the year, and they're still getting production, obviously, out of James White and now Sony Michel. So, it's the Bill Belichick effect. It's the Patriots. They're continuing to, work with what they have, and they're succeeding. And this was, albeit it was against the Colts, who are 1-4, but the Colts have been in every game just about this season. They arguably could have beaten the Eagles, the week before. It's a shame, as well as the Texans. It's a shame because the Colts, the record does indicate what they are. Because, at the end of the day, they haven't been able to finish games, and that's what the record is. But this was a better team than give it credit for, and I thought the Patriots did a nice job of, calming things down. They now sit at 3-2 in the division, and they're the leaders in the division due to the tiebreaker after beating Miami the week before. So the Patriots are sitting pretty there in the AFC. Moving on, we got the Bills taking on the Titans in what was kind of just a defensive brawl. There's some poor quarterback play. Marcus Mariota followed up a brilliant performance against the Eagles with a not-so-brilliant performance that led to a loss. Mariota only threw for 129 yards and an interception. The Bills finally got LaShawn McCoy going on the ground, which should bode well for the future when they go and trade him to the Eagles, like I believe they will, back to the Eagles, rather. The Bills are still not getting a ton of production out of Josh Allen, and I'd imagine that's probably going to change down the road, but I don't think it's this year. And really, truthfully, Josh Allen isn't an NFL starter right now. Yes, he's been able to start games. He's won games, but Josh Allen's thrown for, 70 yards in a game? He hasn't really been used, and it's been a lot of the defensive performance. And, when you look at the Bills' defense, I don't think people realize, Sean McDermott was a rookie coach that took them to the playoffs last year for the first time in 19 years, albeit he had Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor also helped. But when you look at what they have on defense, talking about, the first-round pick last year, Trey White, one of the better corners in the league already, and then their first-round pick this year in Tremaine Edmonds. They have Matt Milano, who was kind of an under-the-radar guy who's really turned into a quality player. Lorenzo Alexander. This is the same team that had, or rather you witnessed, the cornerback Vontae Davis retire on the spot during a game. It seemed like people were writing off Buffalo really quickly. And I'm not saying that Buffalo's now in the playoff race, but this is not a team that is, they may not be that great, but they're going to compete. And a lot of that is a credit to Sean McDermott as a head coach. I believe, he did receive a lot of flack, and rightfully so, for saying that he would consider looking at the film with, Nathan Peterman and all that, and his support for Nathan Peterman. But regardless, I think this is a good football coach, and he's got his defense playing well. So, I think the Bills stealing this one against the Titans 13-12 was huge for them. They move up to 2-3. Now they sit, I believe, third in their division behind the Miami Dolphins and the Patriots. So that's a pretty big step for them. And then you look at the Titans, and this was a missed opportunity for the Titans. They had a chance to go up 4-1. This is easily a game that Titans fans were probably putting W's on their schedule. They blew this game. They lose 13-12, and it's just, it's one of those games that's going to haunt you because you just beat the Eagles. Playing in Buffalo is not an easy task. And I'll say this right now, you're looking at a Texans team that we'll talk about in a little bit. They're a 10-point favorite, betting favorite, against the Bills on the road in Buffalo. I just don't know if I like that. So that little thing I'm throwing out there, but I like the way Buffalo's defense is playing. They've been nasty, and they're physical, and they got a lot of talent across the board. So it doesn't surprise me that they're maybe, they could use another interior defensive lineman or maybe another pass rusher, but Jerry Hughes is fine, and Kyle Williams is still kicking. So I mean, overall, the Bills, they need to win this football game, and they got it done. The Titans again fall to 3-2, and really the Titans didn't continue the momentum against the Eagles. The Eagles, that was kind of a huge game for them. We thought, that would be the coming out party for them, just like we just mentioned with New England. And, I think rightfully so. I mean, Corey Davis had his first 100-yard game in his career and seemed relatively neutralized by Tre'Davious White. I definitely think that, you're looking at a team, one of these teams will be in the playoffs, and I put my money probably on the Titans. They're still trying to get this thing together. Matt LaFleur is still a rookie offensive coordinator. He was a quarterbacks coach with the Falcons. He's not a rookie offensive coordinator. He's a 2-year offensive coordinator. He was a quarterback coach with the Falcons. The Rams grabbed him last year. And, I mean, I'd make the argument he really is a rookie offensive coordinator because, in a way, to backtrack what I was saying, he doesn't have Sean McVay anymore. So he's pretty much calling all the plays. And, due to that being the case, that I think you could say he's a rookie. So he's still, this team is still finding a way to get things going. Mike Vrabel made the really gutsy call to go for it on 4th down, and which ultimately won them the game against the Philadelphia Eagles. So you have a good head coach there. It's just a matter of getting this offense going. Mariota has battled injury for the last 2 years now, and when he's healthy, he's shown he can be a really good player. And the Titans have had that issue of him staying healthy. Derrick Henry really hasn't gotten going, and it really makes you wonder when he's going to. I won't say they're a mess right now. They're staying at 3-2, but they are probably the worst 3-2 team as it stands right now in the league. So moving on, the 4-1 Bengals took down the 3-2 Dolphins, 27-17. This was actually a game the Dolphins started off great. They scored 17 unanswered to start, and then after that it was the Bengals scoring 17 unanswered from in the third and fourth quarter, and they ended up taking over due to the touchdown that Sam Hubbard, the draft pick out of Ohio State, returned the forced fumble. So this game went from great to really bad quickly. 17 all, and then it became 27-17, and the Bengals are now sitting at 4-1, and they have a game against their rival Pittsburgh Steelers coming up this week. The Bengals have been really intriguing for me. This isn't a team that is your stereotypical 4-1 team. That they look great. This is a team that's really had to fight and claw their way to victories. They barely eked out a win in Atlanta. It was a great win for them. But that wasn't a dominant performance. Their defense, albeit very talented, they haven't really been able to silence teams necessarily. They did give up a lot of points to Atlanta. And then this game, I mean, they only give up 17 to the Dolphins, but they started off so quickly. Michael Johnson, again, with the the interception for the tying score, and then Sam Hubbard with the touchdown. So, I think the Bengals are looking good so far. Marvin Lewis has been there for over 15 years as the head coach. No playoff win. Things eventually have to change, right? I like what they're doing. I think Andy Dalton is what he is. I don't think he's gotten better. I don't think he's gotten worse. I think he's, Andy Dalton, and you keep getting him weapons, and he's going to look a little bit better. Now, the emergence, or rather the development of Joe Mixon, I think that this Bengals team can really put up points on the board. I'm not saying that they're a top offense, but I do like what they're doing as a unit. And their defense is talented, and one of the best young defensive players in the league, who was just drafted out of Wake Forest, Jesse Bates, is really turning it on. Jesse Bates has been huge for them, and he is really exploding onto the scene. Doesn't surprise me. They also made a great move and grabbed Houston cornerback William Jackson 2 years before. He, of course, had a season-ending injury before he could even get going, and then last year he had an unbelievable season. So, there's they have a lot of talent there. It's not shocking. Carl Lawson, obviously, and then Sam Hubbard, as aforementioned. So, that's the Bengals for you. I think they're playing some good football, and the Dolphins are in jeopardy because they started off this game. They kind of reassured that, all right, we're a little bit for real, and then it just kind of went all downhill from there. So the Dolphins starting off 17-0, then give up 17 and then end up losing. But this was also on the road, keep in mind, so it's kind of tough to completely rule them out. But here's the thing. This upcoming week, they go up against, for my money, the best defense in football, which is the Chicago Bears, and I don't like the matchup at all. Miami's a team that's going to flirt with 8-9 wins. They're not a team that is going to be a powerhouse, and their 3-0 record to start was a little premature to get the hype going. So, yeah, they could be a solid team. Ryan Tannehill does a lot with what, Adam Gase is trying to do. He's pretty conservative. He's not going to turn the ball over constantly. He's a good quarterback for what he's trying to do until, Gase finds his guy. But really, the fact is the Dolphins have to start getting guys like Kenyon Drake going. Kenyon Drake, near the end of last year, was the most efficient running back in the league, even more efficient than Todd Gurley. All of a sudden, they grab Frank Gore, and they draft my guy, Kalen Ballage. They barely use Ballage. Barely use him. Frank Gore's kind of the starter, and Kenyon Drake's nowhere to be seen. Kenyon Drake needs the football. They need to start running the football with Kenyon Drake, and they need to start taking advantage of the fact they have a really good running back in Kenyon Drake, and what made them so confident that they could just trade Jay Ajayi to the Eagles to begin with. So that's just my take on the Dolphins. They can steal a wild card spot, but they're going to need to really run the football with Kenyon Drake and have more of a balanced offensive attack. You can't just rely on the big splash plays that, Kenny Stills and Jakeem Grant and Albert Wilson are able to get you here and there. It's not about the here and there. And right now, they're very, I would say they're very frustrated, according to multiple reports, about Devontae Parker, their former first-round pick. So, we'll see what they do with him. They could end up trading him, and that would be really interesting because I think it would create more opportunity for an Albert Wilson to really take over. I think he's one of the better receivers, more underrated receivers in the league, and I think he can definitely do something for them. moving on, the 2-2-1 Browns beat the 3-2 Ravens 12-9 in overtime. And this is a game that not many expected the Browns to win. Now, it was in Cleveland, so let's at least, give them some credit. But no, that was not how it was going to be. Everyone assumed, including myself, that the Ravens were going to, basically stall Baker Mayfield's offense. But Baker Mayfield ended up throwing over 340 yards and a touchdown against the Ravens. He was everything they needed him to be. They only scored 12 points. But again, the 12 points was enough to win a football game. They're second of the year, and it's against a division rival. And when push comes to shove, when this Cleveland Browns team is pretty good, and if the Ravens were to tie a game, they'd be looking at potentially tying the record. And this is how the Browns win the tiebreaker. I mean, you got to win the games in your division. I was definitely impressed by Baker because he wasn't. I won't say he was like flashy. It's quiet 342 yards, but he did that against, for my money, one of the better defenses in football in the Baltimore Ravens, and that's what's really impressive. Up until this point, Joe Flacco has been really good, and he just wasn't able to push the Baltimore Ravens over on the road, and that's really what hurt them, as well as not being able to get the run going with Alex Collins and the defense. They played a heck of a game. I mean, they gave up 342 to Baker, but they only gave up 12 points, and it included overtime. So, they get Jimmy Smith back this upcoming week. It'll be interesting to see the Ravens, because all of a sudden, after a great start to the season, early start, now the Ravens lose to the Browns, and it's not the Browns are good, it's the Ravens are bad. So I'm not jumping off the Ravens bandwagon if I'm a fan of theirs, or, if I could definitely see them in the playoffs, so I'm going to temper my expectations on them falling off on that one. So that is the Browns and Ravens. It was a crazy overtime game, again, 12-9. There's not a ton to talk about, except for the fact that really there wasn't a lot of offense, and there's two good defenses going at it. And I'll just say this right now. Denzel Ward, every single game I've watched, he has just made play after play after play. Denzel Ward right now, for my money, and I don't think it's close, he has to be Defensive Rookie of the Year. I mean, he is absolutely changing the game. He's a game breaker. You talk about a guy that can block kicks, punts, and interceptions, take him for the house, as well as the wherewithal to pick up the fumble and run it back for a touchdown. He has great athleticism, and his awareness is off the charts. Denzel Ward is going to be an all-pro player, and the Browns got a really good player to build around, on top of the fact that they have Myles Garrett already on their defense, a number 1 overall pick. So a lot of flack that they received for drafting Denzel Ward that early, and they're making people kind of pay for that, because I mean, he looks probably like the best, I would say the best draft pick in this draft. I mean, aside from Saquon Barkley. So, that's with the Browns. But we had the Lions, 2-3 Lions, taking on the 2-1 Packers, and they ended up winning 31-23. This game was absolutely nuts. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. Mason Crosby, he has been the model of consistency. He's one of the better kickers in the game, and he missed 5 kicks. 5 kicks that would have ended up pretty much winning the game for the Packers. Now, I don't like saying that, because a lot of people are saying that, and really what I want to cover is that, yes, if he hit those 5 kicks, that in hindsight, and just looking at it as it is, if you're just adding 5 kicks to the scoreboard, then yes, they would have beat the Lions, but the Lions also would have had a different approach. Their offense might have changed. Their play calling sure would have changed. So you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt. But this was a big win for the Lions, and this further reinforces my idea that I've been saying for a while. The Lions are one of the scariest teams when they play at home. they get it done at Ford Field. And they really beat the Patriots badly. Now, granted, they had the intel because Matt Patricia was in that building for a long time before he became a head coach. And, I mean, they had Bob Quinn, obviously, the GM, who's a Patriots disciple. So, you have those two guys. They know what they're doing. But also, the Patriots were struggling, for sure. But that was kind of the response. I mean, the Lions started off their season on prime time against the Jets, and they got obliterated. It was pathetic. And people were already saying that Matt Patricia wasn't liked, and the players didn't like him. They didn't, get along with him or whatever. And here the Lions go. They go up against, arguably, I mean, for my money, he's the greatest quarterback of all time, Aaron Rodgers. They go up against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. Now, albeit they do have two of their top three receivers out. They did have Devontae Adams, of course. He was healthy, but they were without Randall Cobb due to a hamstring, and I believe due to a concussion, I could be wrong, Geronimo Allison. So those were two key contributors that were out, but you did get a chance to see for the Packers. Oh, and also they were without Jair Alexander, their first-round pick out of Louisville, my number one corner in the draft. They were able to get guys like a Marquez Valdez-Scantling going and Equanimeous St. Brown, which is huge because they're both huge. They're both 6'5", respectively. They both run in the 4.4s, 4.3s. I believe Scantling ran in the 4.2s or the low 4.3s, and then Equanimeous St. Brown ran the 4.4s. So they have a lot of athleticism there, and these are guys that can really develop and they could turn into something, and they have Aaron Rodgers throwing the football. But, furthermore, the Lions. Look, the Lions went up against their rival Packers, and they put the pedal to the metal. They were up 24-0 going into the halftime. Now, granted, they only scored 7 points the rest of the way, but they changed their approach. They're up 24-0. They went with a conservative approach. They, got some more guys, some snaps, and they let the Packers back into it. And, I get that, but I thought they still played a really good game. And the Packers are all of a sudden in a little bit of trouble. They're 2-2-1. They have that tie with the Vikings. And they have the win over the Bears, which is definitely going to help if they can tie the Bears, for the whole season record. But the Bears are a really good football team. They were able to win that game. I just think you're looking at a Green Bay team that has lost 2 games where they could have won, but they didn't really deserve to win. I just think this was more so... I don't even know if I could really tell you. I mean, I think the Lions, you have to give them a lot of credit. I like what they're doing with Kerryon Johnson, the rookie running back out of Auburn. Love what he's able to do. He fits that offense very well. Gives Matt Stafford a crutch to lean on. They have a trio of receivers that are deadly. I mean, you talk about Kenny Golladay turning into a star. I saw a kind of absurd tweet today. Someone calling him Baby Tron, as in Baby Megatron, which there isn't a Calvin Johnson, so that's ridiculous. But, Kenny Golladay, they have Marvin Jones, they have Golden Tate, and then the 3 tight ends that, I mean, they all work as a unit. They can all be interchangeable. Michael Roberts out of Toledo, the draft pick, and then they signed 2 tight ends I really liked in the draft, in free agency. Luke Wilson, who was with the the Seahawks for quite a while, and then they signed Levine Toilolo, who was with the Falcons for a while. So I thought they have a nice unit of tight ends. They have a really good offensive line. Things are going to come together for the Lions. They may not be, a super team this year. They may not even make the playoffs, but this is a rookie head coach. And in a way, they're kind of starting from scratch because it sure looks to me like they're, they're going to be weeding some guys out at the end of the year. like when you look at what they were able to do for the offensive line, getting the opportunity to protect Stafford, grabbing Frank Ragnow in the draft, who I absolutely loved out of Arkansas, Taylor Decker, Graham Glasgow, and then, they signed TJ Lang and Rick Wagner. So, Stafford has a really good offensive line, and, the defense is still without Ziggy Ansah, and we're not really sure if Ansah is going to play this year or not. He has an ailing injury. I would imagine he's going to play, but that's also been something to keep in mind. Kerry Hyder is back from injury. They have Gerard Davis. So they have a lot of pieces there, and obviously let's not forget Darius Big Play Slay, as well as Jalen Tabor, Nevin Lawson, Quandre Diggs, Glover Quinn. I mean, they have a good secondary. There are issues that they need to clean up, but the Lions are a good football team, and they'll be fighting for a playoff spot. So this was a big win for them, and the Packers are a little bit in trouble. Moving on, the 5-0 Kansas City Chiefs had a tough task, and they stepped right up to the plate, and they were able to take down the now 3-2 Jacksonville Jaguars 30-14. And in reality, that game wasn't as close as it looks. I mean, that was a blowout for the majority of it. Garbage time touchdown for the Jaguars kind of makes it look a little pretty, I guess. I don't really know, but this was the game that Patrick Mahomes, you circled on the when he started, really coming into his own. Player that I loved coming out of college. When he started coming into his own early on this year and had 10 touchdowns, no picks, this was the game you circled. Like, okay, something's got to give. Jaguars have the best defensive football, to many people's, for many people's money. I would say it's the Bears, but a lot of people say Jacksonville. This was a huge test for Mahomes. Now, he threw 2 interceptions, the only 2 he's thrown all season long, but he was able to lead the Chiefs to victory 30-14, and everyone is so quick to be like Sammy Watkins, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes. But you know who keeps getting left out? Last year's single season rushing leader. It was Kareem Hunt, the rookie out of Toledo, and it's like he's kind of forgotten now in this offense. It's pretty crazy. He was able to have a nice game out of it, and really the Chiefs kind of coasted in this one. There was a pick six, Bortles really bad throw. He threw right to Chris Jones, and then Chris Jones took it back for a touchdown. It was kind of just the worst possible game for Bortles to play. And the Chiefs have a really hostile environment. I mean, when you play in Kansas City, you know that is a home field advantage. So it's definitely something to understand. As far as these teams moving forward, the Jaguars are 3-2. It's a little worrisome that Leonard Fournette hasn't really been able to play. He's battling injury. The injuries seem to be getting worse. This is the guy that you drafted the 4th overall pick, so you can't afford this to happen. Blake Bortles, he's showing immense inconsistency. You talk about the way he was able to play against the Patriots and then come back, and in this game he's just brutal. He spiked a ball off his own teammate's helmet, and it was picked. It was one of the weirdest plays I've ever seen. And really, they've had to rely on T.J. Yeldon. They just signed Jamal Charles. Their wide receivers, they finally got DJ Chark involved. They have guys there. This team is so loaded. But the injury to, for my money, the injury to Leonard Fournette is definitely going to hurt. The Chiefs, on the other hand, their secondary is not my favorite. I think their defense has a long way to go, and it's probably going to be the reason that the Chiefs, if they do get eliminated in the playoffs, that's probably going to be the reason. They just have to score more than the other team, and that's kind of a ridiculous approach to have. Moving on, the 2-3 Jets beat the 2-3 Broncos 34-16 in New York, and it was kind of a brawl. The Jets came to play. I mean, let's be real here. The Broncos didn't make halftime adjustments. They didn't make any adjustments. The Jets came out firing on all cylinders. Sam Darnold threw some brilliant passes. That huge touchdown to Robbie Anderson, both touchdowns to Robbie Anderson. And then, obviously you have to look at Isaiah Crowell going over the 200-yard mark and the way Bilal Powell was able to run the football as well. So, the Jets, obviously, Marcus May returns and he instantly gives, a boost of energy into this secondary. The Jets have been dealing with some injuries, but the Jets have a lot of talent on their defense. Their offense isn't half bad. And this was a big confidence booster for the Jets, who seemed like they were worse than their record, or better than their record. Mainly because they started off the season blowing out the respective team that they played. The Broncos, they face the Rams this Sunday, and that should be a good one. I think that's going to be close. But in this game, the Broncos, they didn't make adjustments. Like I mentioned, the defense didn't really seem to adjust to anything that was going on. And right now, if you look at the Broncos headlines, it seems like everyone's flipping out. It seems like, the sky is falling. It's the end of everything as we know it. And, I don't think that's the right way to look at it. I think the Broncos had a bad game. I think that they've been in games where they could have won and maybe they didn't finish well. You can't, in my opinion, you can't beat yourself up over the Kansas City game. But it also shows you exactly why you have to win those games. Because losing games like that, when you put all of your personnel, you put all of your strength and power into one game, and then you end up losing it, Monday Night Football against the Chiefs, that could derail your season. That was one of the worries that the Rams lost to the Vikings. The amount of points they scored. Jared Goff had his best season, or his best game in his career, throwing 5 touchdowns. I mean, if they lost that game, that could have had a chance of derailing them. So the Broncos, I won't say were derailed, but this game is either going to wake them up or this is just going to deject the life out of them. And I guess we're going to find out this weekend, but this was not a good one. My question is, Royce Freeman, who's averaging over 5 yards per carry, finds himself not getting carries. They keep relying on Phillip Lindsay. Lindsay's good. Don't get me wrong. Lindsay is a lot like, say, a Chris Thompson, like a scat back. But I don't understand their fascination with a UDFA and Lindsay over the guy they spent actual draft capital on, who's actually played really well in Royce Freeman. You can split them, sure, but you can't name Royce Freeman the back and then, lean on Phillip Lindsay. But it was nice to see, Deshaun Hamilton get involved, Cortland Sutton. They still have Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas and Jeff Hireman. Jake Butt's out for the year, so that is unfortunate. But, there are, talented players on this roster. It's a matter of putting it all together, and it's a matter of, is Vance Joseph going to survive this purge? Because I would have to imagine if the Broncos don't make the playoffs, Vance Joseph is out the door. Before the season started, I picked the Broncos to make the playoffs. I believe Case Keenum is the right guy to have there. They weren't able to get Kirk Cousins. I liked the Case Keenum move. So, we'll see about that. And I think, he offers that mobility element that, keeps plays alive. And, he's got a lot of talent around him. So you'd like to see more out of him. But, I think he's definitely going to keep the game close against the Rams this Sunday. And, rightfully so. Moving on. The 2-2-1 Steelers laid waste to the 1-4 Falcons. 41-17 in Pittsburgh. With before we even dive into this thing, the Falcons, when they play away from the dome, they are pitiful. They are absolutely pitiful. When they're not playing on their turf, it's something I just feel like their offense was built for what they play on as far as the kind of turf they play on. They went over to the natural grass at Heinz Field, and they looked so bad. They looked out of sync. I won't say everyone did. I mean, I watched some of that game, and a lot of the game, and Deidre Sennett was throwing Marcus Pouncey, the center, at will. The Falcons finally got Devontae Freeman back. So, you'd like to think, good things were happening and everything. But here's the thing. The Steelers, they also, like we mentioned earlier with the Patriots, the Steelers always start off pretty slow. It always seems that way. And then Mike Tomlin figures it out. Well, maybe he might have already figured it out. The Steelers did just come off a win against Tampa Bay. And for my money, the Steelers now winning their second game of the season in this fashion, 41-17 beatdown. Antonio Brown catching 2 touchdowns. You see James Conner having 2 touchdowns. I mean, this offense looked pretty good, and the defense that has had a lot of issues, they only give up 17 points. TJ Watt had himself a nice game. I think really the big thing about this was Joe Hayden and his ability to shadow Julio Jones. I thought he played pretty well and very well, and Julio Jones wasn't really much of a factor in this one to really blow anything up. This is absolute panic button for the Falcons. You cannot let this season get away. You are now 1-4. You have scored all of these points. You've seen games. You saw the game the week before. They scored all those points against the Bengals. And it's like, for what? They end up losing at the end. So, the Falcons really have to get this all together. They're a team that snuck in the playoffs last year and were able to beat the Rams in the first round. But then they were beaten by the Eagles. This is a team, though, like, they really need to get things going. 4-1 is not going to help, especially, or 1-4, especially in the division where you now have, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, although they look like they're falling from grace, and they were on a bye this week, Carolina Panthers, and, of course, the New Orleans Saints, who we'll talk about down the road. But the thing that I look at is, where are you, as far as point differential? Because I do think that's a key stat. I mean, point differential does matter. I mean, the Rams have the most in the league at plus 75, and then the next one is the Ravens at plus 55, and then the next one, it's tied with Chicago and Kansas City at 46, plus 46. And then New Orleans is plus 40. So after that, you're looking at plus 25 New England, plus 23 Cincinnati. And then the next one is 18, plus 18 New York, plus 16 Jacksonville. And then we're down to plus 13 Carolina and plus 10 Pittsburgh. Now, the Falcons are negative 30. So they're scoring a ton of points. They are third in the NFC in points scored. But the issue with them is that they've given up 163 points. That is not very good. And that's an issue. And if the Falcons don't get it corrected, which, here's the thing, no Deion Jones, no Keanu Neal, Ricardo Allen gets hurt. Now, I mean, I just don't know if this is going to be a year where they even make the playoffs. And those are key injuries. Deion Jones is able to cover the majority of the field. Now, they've gotten really good play out of DeMonte Casey, however you say his name. But I just don't think it's enough. Keanu Neal is a special talent. Deion Jones is very special. I think he might be the best player on the Atlanta Falcons aside from Julio Jones. Their team has gotten relatively slower on the defensive side of the ball, and they're the fastest defense. When healthy, they're the fastest defense in the league, sideline to sideline, and I don't think it's really much of an argument. So they're going to have to get that situated. Moving on, the 3-1 Panthers beat the 1-4 Giants 33-31. It was the Panthers game. The Panthers did outplay the Giants, but the Giants came storming back in the fourth quarter, made it a game, and ended up taking the lead. That was all for naught because, of course, Giants fans, of course, Graham Gano hits a 63-yarder, which ties the league record all time for the longest field goal. Ties the field goal, and he hits a 63-yarder to win the game. That is insane. And he probably could have made it from 68. Odell Beckham Jr. threw a touchdown pass in this game. He caught a touchdown pass. Saquon Barkley looked really good, except he did tweak his back. He came down kind of awkwardly, jumping in the air for a touchdown. Eli Manning had his moments, but I thought he played a pretty good game. Cam Newton and company. The Panthers are weird every year, it feels like. But the Panthers, I'll tell you this right now, they're sitting there at 3-1, and say what you want to say about them, but Christian McCaffrey, you have DJ Moore, their first round pick, Devin Funchess, Greg Olson's coming back from injury. Now I know we've said that before, and his career might be shot because of injury, but he's still a talented player. Their defense is filthy. Their secondary is really starting to get together. They did go out and sign Eric Reed to bolster that secondary group, and I don't know. I look at the Panthers and I'm like, they're not the Rams, they're not the Saints, they're not the Rams or the Saints, but they're a team that's probably the next tier. Or they're not the Rams, Saints, or Bears, but they're the next tier. And that's a team that I think could definitely play in the playoffs. We'll see. They do this quite often where they're competitive all year, and then they kind of tail off at the end, and you're looking at 9-7, 10-6. But the way the Eagles, the Vikings, the Packers all started, the Falcons started, it's really opened the door for teams like this to really get in there and make noise. Especially the NFC East, which was expected to be better than what they're doing. 1-4 Giants, 2-3 Cowboys, 2-3 Redskins, and or rather, I think 2-2 Redskins, and the 2-3 Eagles, or 3-2. Yeah, I think it's 2-3 Eagles. No one expected that. So, we'll definitely see on that end. Again, Panthers carve out a good win. The Giants, however, this is deflating. They were, Eli was picked off twice. Cam Newton was picked off twice. This is a game that both sides were able to get turnovers, but this is deflating because, at the end of the day, the Giants did come back and actually take over this game, and they lost it on a game-winning field goal. It's definitely frustrating. As far as the Panthers' defense goes, they just keep getting better. Dante Jackson was a really good pickup from LSU, one of the fastest corners in the league. James Bradbury continues to develop. Mike Adams is the ageless wonder. And then, we mentioned Eric Reed, Luke Kuechly, Captain Munnerlyn, Shaq Thompson, Julius Peppers, another, ageless wonder. Kawan Short is obviously great. And then, Mario Addison and, Dontari Poe. And then Victor Butler and F.A. Obada. They have these guys all over that are making plays. And they have a good defense. Like, that is one of the better defenses in the league. And as far as the Giants go, love what they're doing in the trenches. They're getting some really good production out of Kerry Wynn, I've noticed. Dalvin Tomlinson, obviously, with snacks. And, you talk about adding B.J. Hill to the mix through the draft. The Giants, I like what they're doing on defense, but I don't understand for the life of me. I actually like Eli Apple, Landon Collins, Alec Ogletree, Janoris Jenkins, again, B.J. Hill, B.J. Goodson even, Ray Armstrong, Curtis Riley, Dante Dayon, who's really starting to he's playing well. He just doesn't get to play all the time. I'm not really a huge fan of Kareem Martin, but like Lorenzo Carter, the rookie, Mario Edwards. But here's the thing. They have all this talent. They're starting B.W. Webb at cornerback, and that is exactly why they went out in the 3rd round and they drafted Sam Beal in the supplemental draft. B.W. Webb should not be starting on an NFL roster. He's rated the worst cornerback per Pro Football Focus in the game. So I just don't understand that. And he got picked on by Devin Funchess, so I just don't really get it. But moving on, we have the 5-0 Rams versus the 2-3 Seattle Seahawks in a game that was way closer than many anticipated. I've already gone over this on the Downtown Rams podcast in our post-game show, but I will say that I was really impressed with the Rams' ability to fight back in a game that was way closer than anticipated. Look, and I said this before, the Seahawks gave the crowd, the 12th man, a reason to cheer. It was loud. Guys weren't hearing the whistle. Rams are having trouble communicating. They had to call all their timeouts. The Rams were still able to win this. They went for it on 4th and 1 and on their own side of the field, and they ended up winning. Hats off to Sean McVay, and Jared Goff. Your ability to persevere through losing a Cooper Kupp and a Brandon Cooks in that game, I think was big. You saw guys like Kaderil Hodge and Josh Reynolds step up. You saw Robert Woods take hold of all of the duties there. He is fully capable of doing that. Obviously, Todd Gurley had himself another game. You talk about adding, 3 touchdowns or however many he had in that. It was 3. So, that was big. But the defense, that was the issue. And the Seahawks, I'll tell you right now, Tyler Lockett, electric. He's one of the big, deep threats in this league. He beat Marcus Peters badly. The Seahawks had a pretty good showing, and they have a lot to build off of because they weren't given a chance to win this game. And all of a sudden, they had the Rams down to the wire. It was down to the wire. So, the Seahawks have nothing to be disappointed about or nothing to hang their heads about. Chris Carson got the run game established early on. It was kind of weird how they only had Russell Wilson throw the ball 21 times in a game that close. They were never really able to take full control of the lead, and Chris Carson ran 19 carries for about $116. And then you had Mike Davis, who also looked really good, and he was averaging over 5 yards a carry, and he had a touchdown. They didn't even use Rashad Penny, the first rounder. Then you look at their wide receivers, and Doug Baldwin is playing injured. He had 1 target and had 1 catch. David Moore had 2 touchdowns, and then really it was Tyler Lockett. Bradley McDougald is playing like a Pro Bowl talent. He is going to have to. He had big shoes to fill with Earl Thomas leaving, but Bradley McDougald looked very good. Tedrick Thompson had a good game. The only issue I had was the hit on Brandon Cooks. People disagreed with me, but I still felt like he should have been thrown out for that, penalized at least. That was a helmet, a head and neck area hit that could have been avoided. Ran downhill and hit him hard, but I'm not going to kill that any more than I already have. It's definitely out there, so if you guys want to check that out, videos are everywhere, and you decide for yourself. But obviously, they got some good play. I thought out of Frank Clark, a guy that wasn't even supposed to play. He was sick during the week. They weren't sure if he was going to suit up, and he was able to hit the only sack of the game and an interception in the red zone to really change the game. The fortunateness of this game could have ended up being a Rams blowout, and people don't realize that. You talk about getting an interception at the goal line, that changes everything. That changes the momentum. It changes the way that this game is going, and it was big. It was a big-time play by Frank Clark. Although it was shot up in the air, bounced off of Todd Gurley's chest after he was a little pass interfered, I guess I would say. So, I thought he played very well, and DJ Fluker played great. He had a couple huge reps where he annihilated Ndamukong Suh. Aaron Donald had his usual where he just teed off on J.R. Sweezy and was held pretty much the majority of the game, which, I mean, that's to be expected with Aaron Donald. You had Corey Littleton, who had his 4th punt block of his career, or I believe in the last 2 years, and that is the most all-time, I believe, so that was pretty crazy. So yeah, all in all, it was a battle, and the Rams, they win their, another gut check game. They move to 5-0. The Seahawks lose, but they added a lot of believers in that stadium that thought maybe this was kind of the end of the road and Russell Wilson was going to be gone. They were going to have to blow his team up, because right now they look like the second best team in the NFC West. So, there's that. Moving on, the 3-2 Chargers, who are starting to look like an AFC favorite, I would say. They beat the 1-4 Raiders 26-10. What can you say about the Chargers? I mean, they don't have Joey Bosa, and they're constantly getting pressure on the quarterback. You look at what the Chargers do on offense. They have the weapons. Obviously, Phillip Rivers is fully capable of leading a winning team. Austin Eckler is the X factor of that team, and Melvin Gordon's turning into an elite back in this league. Keenan Allen, and then you have Mike Williams, the former 8th overall pick in the draft last season. He is starting to really turn it on. So there are some big things to definitely keep in mind for the Chargers. They're again, they lost earlier in the year to the Chiefs in a game that ended up being pretty close at the end. But they lost to the Chiefs. So they started off 0-1, but they lost to the team that's literally undefeated, one of 2 teams. So I think they kind of got, overlooked. And I don't think you can really overlook the Chargers. Again, Keenan Allen, Tyrell Williams, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler, Melvin Gordon. And then, on the defensive side of the ball, you talk about Melvin Ingram. Once they get Bosa back, that's going to be something. You have Jaleel Adai in the back with the rookie who's going to make a run for Defensive Rookie of the Year and try to stop Denzel Ward from being Defensive Rookie of the Year, and that's Derwin James, who's already off to a great start. Desmond King, obviously, you talk about Casey Hayward and Uchenna Nwosu from USC that they drafted in the draft, and they just have all this talent. And the Chargers, on paper, are definitely a team to watch for the Super Bowl. I'm not saying they're going to make it, but I definitely am starting to understand the hype, and they're playing well. They're definitely playing well. Bosa will be back at some point, and it's looking good for the Chargers moving forward. As far as the Raiders go, and this will be pretty short and sweet, it's pretty obvious and evident that John Gruden, albeit was a really good coach 10 years ago, he's a little out of touch with the league. As far as scripted plays, the offense looks great during the scripted plays. Once he has to make adjustments, call plays on the fly, I just don't know if he has the touch of today's game, and I think that's what really hurts him. The Raiders also losing Khalil Mack means they have no pressure to speak of, and they're not getting it out of, Arden Key or anybody like that. So I think, losing Khalil Mack was huge. And, furthermore, I would say guys on the offense. I mean, Amari Cooper, in my opinion, is underachieved. They let Michael Crabtree go. So they're kind of banking on Martavis Bryant, who was kind of, a hit or miss whether or not he's going to pass or fail a drug test any second. They've been getting some production out of Marshawn Lynch and Doug Martin, but all in all, this is not a very good football team. They are going to finish near the bottom of the league, and they'll probably be picking in the top 5 come 2019, in the draft come April. So, again, it's a tale of a team that's a potential Super Bowl contender and a team that is probably not anywhere near a Super Bowl contender. So, that was that game, 26-10. Chargers had control pretty much the whole way through. Moving on, the 2-2-1 Vikings beat the 2-3 2-3 Eagles in a game, 23-21. It was definitely quite the game. The Vikings come off their loss to the Rams on Thursday Night Football. They had all this time to prepare for their game against the Eagles, but as we saw with the Rams, sometimes having that much time to prepare for a game can get you a little rusty. You haven't played as soon as the last team. So while it looks good on paper, the idea that you get all that rest, it doesn't always bode well. And I do think you saw it with the Rams. I don't know how much you saw that with the Vikings, who are still without Everson Griffin due to him being on the, I guess the injured list. I mean, he's kind of having some mental breakdown at this point, mental issues. So wish him the best, of course. The Vikings, they win 23-21. Kirk Cousins continues his streak of dominance. He only threw one touchdown pass, but he was efficient, 300 yards on 30 passes, on 37 attempts. I'm really impressed with Kirk Cousins. I mean, just watching him against the Rams, he gave them every reason to win that football game, and he was the reason that they were that close at the end. Not having Dalvin Cook, I do think hurts. They haven't been able to fully utilize their offense to the best of their ability. Dalvin Cook can help in the passing game and in the run game, obviously, and he's one of the better backs when healthy. So now you have Latavius Murray, who's not really, they're not going to rely on him a ton, and he's going to split with guys like Mike Boone and Rock Thomas, who they don't really have a ton of experience. This offensive line isn't very good to begin with. It's kind of hard to run the football. So there's that. Adam Thielen right now is quite possibly the most impressive receiver in the league, and he and Diggs just kind of, tee off on the defenses. He and Diggs were over 100 yards last week against the Rams, and they were almost both over 100 yards this week against the Eagles. I just think that this Vikings team is going to continue to get better. They only added on to their roster, and the Eagles right now are in a little bit of a panic. Carson Wentz had a really good game, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 311 yards. They lost Jay Ajayi for the year. He tore his ACL, so it's going to be Wendell Smallwood, James Adams, and it's going to be Darren Sproles as well as Corey Clement the rest of the way. And then, as far as the passing attack, while Wentz did, for the most part, he got to a bunch of different receivers, Jordan Matthews, Ajayi, Dallas Goedert, Alshon Jeffrey, Nelson Aguilar, Shelton Gibson, Wendell Smallwood, and Zach Ertz. He really leaned heavily on Zach Ertz when it mattered the most, 110 yards on 10 catches for a touchdown. So that was definitely something that I noticed from the get-go. Wentz looks... He's not quite Wentz of last year yet, and I think that'll take some time, but he's still one of the better quarterbacks in the league, and I would imagine the Eagles are going to start being able to win some football games. Now, coming into the year, I actually had the Vikings and the Eagles both missing the playoffs, so right now it kind of looks like that could happen, but right now I wouldn't be so sure about that. I think the NFC East looks a tad weak. Maybe the Giants, they have all that firepower on offense. They might be getting, somebody like Evan Ingram back. So maybe that will help. And their defense has talent, but B.W. Webb is just not the answer. The Redskins we'll be talking about later on, as well as Dallas. So I won't go entirely there. But yeah, I could definitely see that. And, the Eagles, they're not going to be this bad for this long. Ajayi, the injury hurts, but as mentioned earlier, they could definitely end up trading for LaShawn McCoy or maybe even a Le'Veon Bell. Moving on, the Cardinals and the 49ers. Cardinals finally win a game. It's 1-4 for them, 1-4 for the 49ers. 49ers are so bad, they got the Rams kicked off of Sunday Night Football, so we'll just go with that. But it's 28-18 is the final. Josh Rosen looks somewhat comfortable at this point. He was able to find his buddy, fellow drafty, Christian Kirk. I think those two are going to make a nice duo moving forward. Still, you're seeing an Arizona team that just isn't quite where I expected it to be, although it's going to take time. Steve Wilkes, rookie head coach. They lose James Bettcher, who was the defensive coordinator, and Bruce Arians' offense is gone. So it's kind of a new, keeping somewhat of the same personnel. It's kind of a completely, big blowing up of the team and everything. I was impressed with C.J. Beathard. I'll say that right now. This guy may not be Garoppolo, but he continues to challenge defenses. He threw for over 300 yards against the Arizona Cardinals. He's gotten better than last year, and his connection with George Kittle going back to Iowa, I mean, that is definitely something to watch for fantasy if you have Kittle on your team or anything like that. But just in general, having George Kittle, for him, having that connection, I think it's allowed him kind of a safety blanket to really feel confident to go down the field. Kyle Juszczyk as well, 6 catches for 75 yards. Kittle went over 80 yards. Trent Taylor went over 60 yards. Garcon, Kendrick Bourne, Victor Bolden, Alfred Morris. So, he pretty much spread the ball out and threw over 50 times. So, he definitely, he's not flashy, but he's somebody that continues to get a little bit better. Josh Rosen, again, not a flashy line box, but he was able to throw a touchdown pass to Christian Kirk. And then, I'm going to say this right now, David Johnson is not 100%. I'm not going to say that he's not 100% health-wise, but there's something off. He's not quite there. He's not as confident as he was, and that's to be expected, the broken hand and everything. Missed, the majority of the season. I totally understand it. But it's hurting Arizona. I mean, he ran for a little bit over 3 yards a carry. That's not going to do it. He ran for 2 touchdowns, don't get me wrong, but over, a little bit over 3 yards per carry is not going to do it against, bigger competition. Budda Baker. You can't say enough about this kid. Budda Baker, the former Washington safety, is kind of all over the field. He roams very well for the Arizona Cardinals. You talk about 16 tackles, 11 of them being solo, a sack, a tackle for loss, a pass breakup, and a quarterback hit. Budda Baker is all over the field, and he really made his presence known in this one. Was very impressed with him, and he also has been playing with guys like, obviously, Patrick Peterson, Hassan Reddick, after all the rumors and everything, and I'm not saying that they're wrong or right or that they're done, but the rumors of Hassan Reddick being available for trade, he has a pretty nice game, 8 tackles, a sack, 2 pass breakups, a tackle for loss. That was a really good game out of Hassan Reddick. Josh Bynes has been playing well as Antoine Bethea, again, Patrick Peterson. But Trey Boston is the fun one here, because Trey Boston comes from Carolina, and I know he did play for the Chargers, but Trey Boston used to play for Carolina. Carolina used to have Steve Wilkes. Well, Steve Wilkes is now with the Arizona Cardinals, and so he brings his buddy Trey Boston to Arizona. 3 pass breakups. Boston gets an interception as well. He has made an impact. Literally the moment he stepped in that building. They let Tyrann Mathieu go earlier in the year, so that was kind of a little bit of a shock to some people. But that's not really a need for them now. They have the safety spot locked up pretty well, and they're getting some great production. It's only a matter of time before this Arizona Cardinals team gets it together. Josh Rosen isn't going to be throwing 170 yards every game. This is somebody that is a pure pocket quarterback. He's one of the better throwers of the football in this draft, and he's going to be very good. He has stellar pocket presence, and he's a student in the game. I just think when you're looking at Arizona later on in the year, they're going to be a team that's challenging for a second spot in the NFC playoffs. The wild card if all goes right. They're still getting guys back from injury. Marcus Golden just came back to the roster. He's a very talented player in his own right. They still have guys like Chandler Jones and, again, Patrick Peterson and Hassan Reddick and Josh Bynes. So I wouldn't really be writing this team off yet. They still have a nice roster on paper. They just have to put it all together with rookie coach. Moving on, we're narrowing this down. We have 2 games left, and then we're out of here. And this is the first Around the NFL podcast, and we'll see how well you like this and everything. So I can't wait for feedback on this. But without further ado, here's the last of this. So we have the 2-3 Texans. They take down the 2-3 Cowboys 19-16 in overtime after Jason Garrett fails to do what Sean McVay did. Sean McVay, previously mentioned, goes for a 4th and 1 in his own territory and wins the game. Jason Garrett, 4th and 1 on the other side of the field, and he punts it in overtime. So, because he punted it, the Texans took over and they went down the field and they ended up getting a game-winning field goal out of Kaimi Fairbairn, and that was the game. Texans won 19-16. But I just got to say this right now. That was really entertaining. For a 19-16 game, I found that game had everything that you wanted in a football game on Sunday Night Football. Dak Prescott had some nice some good throws, some nice plays. I'm always pretty tough on Dak Prescott, but he played a decent game. And then Deshaun Watson, obviously, and Kike QT, who's turning into one of the really exciting young receivers in the league after just playing his first game just the other day. It was a fun game to watch. J.J. Watt in that defense. The Texans' defense, I mean, everyone knows, Romeo Crennel is a great defensive coordinator. They have pieces. Again, J.J. Watt, having him helps, and having him healthy helps. But this team is just, it's fun to watch. Dallas, Prescott did end up throwing 2 interceptions, and Dallas did struggle quite a lot with Ezekiel Elliott in the running game. A lot of that had to do with Houston's defense, but on the other side of the coin, Dallas has a really good defense. Talk about Leighton Vander Esch. Vander Esch, the rookie out of Boise State, 14 tackles, 11 solo. Then Jalen Smith, who, keep in mind, Jalen Smith was one of the top prospects in that draft the year Myles Jack and him came out. And he, had that knee injury, just like Myles Jack, and he kind of fell. But his knee injury was even worse than Jack's. And the thing with Jalen Smith is that it's taken him a little bit longer. But he's turning into quite the player. His range, he's getting his range of motion back, he's getting his speed back, his explosiveness, and you're seeing it on the field. 12 tackles, had 3 tackles for a loss, a pass breakup, a sack, and 2 quarterback hits. Byron Jones is turning into one of the better cornerbacks in football after switching there. He was number 1 by Pro Football Focus going into this week. 10 tackles, 2 pass breakups. Jeff Heath has actually played pretty well. Xavier Woods. And then you talk about their defense. I mean, Tyrone Crawford. They have guys like Randy Gregory, Dorrance Armstrong. That's not even, that's not to completely throw out DeMarcus Lawrence, who is the best defensive lineman on that team. He had a monster season last year. Taco Charlton. I mean, there's still guys like Chidobe Awuzie, Anthony Brown. The Cowboys have a really good defense, and the Texans have a really good defense, and that's what made this game really fun to watch for the most part. Alfred Blue had himself a game for the Texans. He didn't run very well. He only averaged a little bit over 2 yards per carry. But what Alfred Blue did was catch passes out of the backfield, going for 73 yards on 8 catches. He was definitely a factor for Deshaun Watson, who ended up throwing over 370 yards in this game. But it was the defense. Zach Cunningham, Bernardrick McKinney, Tyrann Mathieu, Justin Reed, Kareem Jackson, Jonathan Joseph, J.J. Watt, Jadeveon Clowney, DJ Reader. I mean, all these guys. Sharice Wright actually didn't play that badly. Really unfortunate to see friend of the podcast, Kayvon Webster, go down with an injury that put him on IR, though. Thoughts out to him. But this defense looked really good. It was really fun to watch. Kareem Jackson had a pick on Dak, and so did the rookie Justin Reed at Stanford. So, I just think this was probably, I wouldn't say it was my favorite game of the week, but it was one of my favorites. These are two teams that are kind of going in the same direction, except, the Cowboys just lost and the Texans just won. The Texans started off really poorly, though. The Cowboys started off with a win over the Giants. The Texans started off poorly. And now the Texans, 2-3, they now have won 2 straight against the Colts and the Cowboys. Obviously not a huge resume, but they're going to head to Buffalo, as mentioned earlier, this upcoming week, and if they can win, they'll go to 3-3. As for the Cowboys, they're 2-3, and they have all the chance in the world because the leader of this division is still the 2-3, or rather the 2-2 Washington Redskins, who had a bye, who just got obliterated on Monday Night Football against the Saints. So, the Cowboys are still in this thing, and they, it's kind of a dogfight. We're going to see who can win that division, and this is an opportunity, kind of a wake-up call. Look, that was a comfortable. I saw this. Stephen A. put this out. I didn't agree with the whole take, but that was a comfortable decision, and sometimes you have to make the uncomfortable decision. And by punting it, it lost them the game. Ezekiel Elliott, I might have run it with Ezekiel Elliott. So, Cowboys, unfortunately for them, they lose that game. Texans win. Both teams look fine. Cowboys' defense is really good. The offense needs to get it going. It's that simple. The last game of the week, 4-1 Saints beat the 2-2 Redskins 43-19. Drew Brees kind of goes off. Hats off to Drew Brees. He's now the all-time passing leader in NFL history, and rightfully so. For some reason, people still underrate him. I don't really know why. And then when you say that he's the all-time leading passer, there'll still be people that say, well, he doesn't have as many rings as so-and-so. At the end of the day, Drew Brees is going to retire as, I don't know if he's the greatest, but he's going to retire as a top 5 quarterback easily all time. And he does have an argument. So, that is what I'll say. Drew Brees over 360 yards, 3 touchdowns, and I'll just say that, the Saints, they absolutely ran over the Washington Redskins, and that was really it. They really needed that because the defense didn't, in my opinion, the defense really didn't get their momentum. They didn't really get going. They have a lot of talent on the defense, and unfortunately, it took them until this game to get going. But luckily for them, it took them until this game to get going. They're 4-1. They're second in the NFC. They look like quite the team to beat right now. Drew Brees obviously is playing just as good as he's ever played. Mark Ingram's back. Alvin Kamara they have. Then you look at Traquan Smith out of UCF. The rookie receiver, he had a game. Michael Thomas is one of the best receivers in the league. Cameron Meredith. And then, the defensive side of the ball, they did lose Marshawn Lattimore to a concussion during the game, but they still have tons of talent. And this team is going to be fighting for a Super Bowl this year. Now, I'm not saying they're going to win it. I'm not saying that at all. But they have a lot of talent. And adding Marcus Davenport, they got a lot of flack for trading 2 first-rounders for Marcus Davenport. But Davenport fits this defense. He adds a lot to an already stout defensive line with Anya Mata and then, Cameron Jordan and Sheldon Rankins. So, I think the Saints are definitely, if I were to rank the teams right now, I'd probably put the Rams number 1, I'd put the Chiefs number 2, I'd put the Bears number 3, and I'd put the Saints number 4, and then I'd probably put The next one will probably be the Bengals and the Patriots at number 5. Probably the Bengals, I'd give them the benefit of the doubt at least 1 week. If they beat the Steelers, they're staying there. If they don't, then the Patriots would, step right in there. So, that has been the Around the NFL Downtown Rams episode. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you like what you heard, if you know that you have a buddy that you always wanted to show the Rams podcast to, the Downtown Rams podcast to, and you felt like, well, he's not a Rams fan, he won't care. Now he can care because he likes whoever team, and I talked about all teams except for the Buccaneers and the Bears, although I did talk about the Bears quite a bit in this one. So that's going to do it for Jake Ellenbogen. Again, this is the Downtown Rams podcast Around the NFL episode for this week. It's the first Around the NFL episode, and I started it week 5. So again, stay tuned. I'll be releasing another one down the road. And for the Rams listeners, the Rams-centric listeners, there will be a podcast pretty soon for the episode 129, and that will be the breakdown of the Rams and Broncos. All right, guys. Talk to you later.